Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to a Story to Tell podcast. Today, I'm talking with Rebecca Wells Phillips. She's an author who lives in Asheville, North Carolina, and she currently has three books out there on the market. So we're going to be talking a little bit about those books today. And what she has coming up in the future too. So the first book that Rebecca has out there, it's called Hating Self by Bleu. That book was released in November of 2023, so it's been on the market for a little while. So it's out there on Amazon. It discusses the author's childhood trauma of growing up in a predominantly white area of Tennessee, and it's allowed Rebecca to heal and to let go of the past. So she's hoping that by sharing this story, it will help others to heal too. She's going to be republishing Hating Self. It will be available soon on Amazon, Barnes& and Noble, and Goodreads.com. We're going to be posting links below this video once we complete so that you can just have access to those links. Interestingly, Rebecca and I have decided to collaborate on creating an audiobook for this version of Hating Self. So this should be interesting. So looking forward to seeing the result of that. So Rebecca's second book, Loving Self by Bleu, that one was released in April of 2024. Um, let's see, this book, Loving Self, was presented in a diary format. So it focuses on the importance of self-love um, and self-care. As with Hating Self, the author here, Rebecca, she has another self-harm event, which, as you read the books, you'll know what we're talking about here, with the which is a major turning point in helping her to overcome her feelings of inadequacy. The third book, Butterfly Blossom by Rachel Bleu, which was released September 25th of 2024. That one was released just the day before Hurricane Helene devastated her state, the state she lives in North Carolina. Um, it's an adult fiction novel illustrating how the protagonist, Sally discovers that she's a lesbian. This story she tells a story of a young woman who's struggling to reconcile her desire to live authentically with her strict religious upbringing. To her surprise, Sally receives spiritual guidance from a close friend and a deceased family member. So this sounds like it might be a good book. So you'll have to go out there and find this book too. So each of these books is available on Amazon.com. Um, and as I mentioned, she'll be republishing Hating Self, and you'll be able to find that on Amazon, Barnes& and Noble, and Goodreads.com. So now she has a couple of current projects that are going on, which we're going to be talking about. Hurricane Helene, resilience after the storm. It looks like this is just going to be part one. So I'm assuming that means you're going to follow up with this with a part two. Will it just be a two-part or? Yes. Okay.
Yes,
All
part.
right. So, and she's also working on Butterfly Blossom, which will be a Rachel Bleu young adult uh, book. So we have those two books to look forward to. So today, as I mentioned, we will be focusing on the Hurricane Helene story. But before we get into that, I wanted to know, maybe you could give us a little bit of a synopsis of your childhood. The In your first book, Hating Self, you talk about your upbringing and a lot of the things that contributed to the I don't want to say issues, but all of the things that you have going on as you come into adulthood that affect your decision making and your life experiences. So, um, could you take just a few minutes to give us a couple of ideas, a couple of ways in which lessons that you might have learned throughout your life
Yes,
that you share in this book?
yes. You grow up thinking that everyone's going to love you as a child. And so, as a Black child growing up in a predominantly white town, you quickly learn that you're not like everyone else. You're constantly reminded that you are the N word, you're of no value, you're not as smart, you're not as pretty, and it's constantly being just knocked in your head every day. And so it just tears you down so much that you get to the point where you don't want to be there. You don't want to live. You really want to disappear. And so I allowed those things to be put in my brain, and they were all lies. Everything was a lie. I was not dumb. I was not less than. I had great value and purpose. And so I think people can't see that when you're in the pain. You can't see what your purpose is. And God has you here for a reason, and everyone has a purpose. So through writing my pain down, it let me release some things. It let me learn to forgive those people who did what they did to me. I'll never forget. And but lessons learned are that you are who you're meant to be. You are valuable. You are a wonderful person. And when people try to beat you down and bully you or discriminate against you, that's because they have a problem. They're not happy with themselves, and so they have to knock someone else down. So I learned, first off, don't listen to what other people say about you. Don't allow them to get in your head and make you feel like you're not worthy to be here, because you are worthy. The second thing I learned was, to kind of take my own path. Don't don't be a follower. You're taught to get along, and you want to fit in everywhere, but that's not what you're supposed to do. Each one of us is supposed to have a different path, and when you follow the masses, you might as well just be a robot. So I had to make my own path, and it was never with everyone else, and I was always the odd man out, the square peg in the round hole. And so my whole life, that's who I've been. And so now I realize that I'm exactly who I'm supposed to be, and I can do so much more with that. I'm able to talk to people who've been bullied or who have had self-harm events. I can understand their pain and what they've gone through. And so through writing Hating Self, I was wanting to reach as many people as possible to talk them down, talk them off the edge, because it's just so important that people learn that they are of value and to see past the darkness. And that's exactly what it is. When you're in that place, you're in a dark place and you can't see a way out. And the only solution in your head is to do away with yourself. So I learned a lot, and I continue to try to teach others and reach out to other people.
Nice. Okay, so I just want to point out to everyone here too that I know that because Rebecca mentions growing up in Tennessee in a predominantly white neighborhood, that this book doesn't have to be about race. It doesn't have to be about the color of your skin. These issues are, and I'm not discounting what you went through, Rebecca, but just to help
Yeah.
others to know that just because she's sharing her experience and where she was raised and what she went through, these experiences, these thoughts, these ideas, these changes that we create in our mind because of where we live, what we go through, who says what about us. Those ideas, those comments, those issues are issues that a lot of us experience, regardless of the color of our skin. So I just don't want anyone thinking that you need to be a person of color to read this book in order to have a good experience or to get something out of it. Because obviously, I've read this book, so I can tell you firsthand that these lessons, this information, these stories, they're not specifically related to one gender, one religion, one ethnic person. They are universal, so to speak. So please, don't stop watching or think that, oh, because she's saying she's talking about these specific issues that you might not get anything out of this book. It's a book that will help you no matter where you are, where you're from. So So please remember that as we continue with this conversation. So I wasn't planning on asking this question or mentioning this, but so you wrote hating self because of these experiences and these ideas that you had. So then you turn around and you write loving self. So this book shares lessons that you've learned and ways that you have learned to do that, to love yourself. One, I think, is the experience, and two is the learning of that experience. So both these books go hand in hand.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So let's jump into this book you have coming out. I know I'm kind of, I don't want to say chomping at the bit here, but this has been Hurricane Helene was a very disastrous storm. It's affected so many people. Today we're going to focus our conversation on this book, Hurricane Helene, Resiliency After the Storm. We know that, I mean, we've seen it all in the news. We've seen the video footage of the storm. And I think in some areas, my experience with people that I know, I think that the North Carolina area was shortchanged in that they didn't really publicize what really happened out there. So there's a lot of damage out there that nobody's talking about. So not to discount the damage and those affected in other areas. No area is any, deserves any less attention than another. But just from what I've seen, there's a lot of what went on in North Carolina that I didn't see out there. Um, so why don't you first of all, you live in North Carolina, so you must have had quite an experience yourself. Were you close to the storm? Were you on the outside of the storm? Why don't you give us a little bit of yeah, a backstory
Yeah,
here?
yeah. Um, so, I wrote the Butterfly Blossoms book, and there, I don't want to say I heard voices, but I was guided to get it published on the 25th
Hmm.
for no reason in particular. I had nothing else planned except for the follow up to Butterfly Blossoms, which is Dragonfly Passion by Rachel Bleu. So after I hit publish and got it published on Amazon, I went to bed that night and everything seemed okay. But it was the next day when all heck broke loose, and I couldn't believe what was happening. I realized I only had a half a tank of gas because I didn't plan. We really hadn't gone grocery shopping. It was just, I was in complete shock what was going on. The water, the deluge of water, the flooding, the amount of flooding. I tried to get to my friend's camping site because I was worried mostly about her camper. And so she was in Candler, whereas I was in Asheville. And all the small towns surrounding Asheville were destroyed or just they had it really, really, really bad. But also Asheville did too. Like the River Arts District got wiped out from all the floods and the mud. But I was trying to get to my friend in Candler to make sure she was okay. And every road I turned down either had a lake of water or trees blocking my way. I could not get to her. I tried for a couple of hours, almost ran out all my gas, just trying to get to her. And she was only, technically, if I was driving on a regular day, 20 minutes away. And it was horrible. I even took a video after I just had to give up because I was running out my gas. And I saw cars that were in the water. I learned later that there was a family that had driven into the flooded water and they perished. And there were trees down and people were getting hit by trees. I was driving down one main road, Lester Avenue, and a car just happened to be going by at the right time, and like three trees fell on the vehicle. I saw that. um I felt like I was in a war zone. And at the time, all I saw was country people, normal country people running around in their trucks, jumping out of their trucks with chainsaws and cutting up trees so that there'd be at least one lane for us to go. At that point, there was no military, there was no government, there was nothing. It was just normal people out trying to help other people. It was amazing how people came together. But we didn't have power. Like, I didn't have power for about 4 days in Asheville. However, other places went weeks. I didn't have potable water, drinkable water for 29 days. So we couldn't drink the water. We had no water to flush toilets. It was horrible. And there has been so much death. People say, oh, well, you've only lost or been able to confirm 230 bodies or dead people. It's because they found their bodies. They were able to identify those people. But there have been body parts found that haven't been identifiable. There's been, I get upset thinking about it because there are people who are still missing. I think right now I saw a list of like 104 people still missing, and they will not say they're dead until they find the body.
Right.
But there was so much water that they're not going to find the body. So the whole reason why I'm writing this book is to get the truth out there and for people to know what really happened.
Right.
And I originally was just going to do one book and hopefully get it published, at the end of this year. But what I'm finding is the whole thought process is the resiliency of the people and of the area and where we end up. And unfortunately, because of the amount of damage and destruction that has happened, we're not going to know what our new normal is for probably, I would predict, years.
Yeah.
So part one is going to be the immediate damage, the things I went through, the things that I've talked to other people about. And then part two will be kind of like the finalization of where we are, because no place is going to ever be normal. And Asheville is a big tourist area, so I understand that they needed to get tourists back here. So there was also, I think, 100,000 people population here. So they rushed to get the water, electricity, and internet to us so that there was not going to be cholera and all these different diseases. So I understood that, but then there's places like Marshall, God, there's so many, Chimney Rock, Lake Lure, these smaller places that they're not getting near as much attention as they need. But I think it's just because of the smaller population.
Right. It sounds like because Asheville is that tourist, I don't want to say tourist trap, but really, I mean, there's a lot going on there. So I think a lot of times, I mean, we all have our own opinion, but in my opinion, I see that as the government, local, federal, whatever, however you want to look at it, because it is that money-making machine, so to speak. They're going to make it look like, that's going to be the example for the state. If that's all taken care of and back to normal, then that means the rest of it is. When in reality, that's not true. We have all of these smaller villages and towns that are still suffering, that people are still without necessities, homes, lights, water. I mean, important, important things we need to live. So, yeah.
No internet. Imagine yourself without internet or phone.
Oh, I know it. I was thinking about that the other day. I was sitting here thinking about, I can't remember, I was having a conversation with someone and we were talking about that being prepared thing. And I'm like, well, I'm pretty well prepared. I mean, I grew up in Alaska. We didn't have any of the modern conveniences. We did the backwoods thing, the roughing it. So I'm like, oh, I think I'm pretty well prepared. But then that one came up and I'm thinking, oh, but the internet, that's kind of there's no workaround for that. So if you don't have that, you just don't have it. And hey, I guess that at that point we just say whatever. But I think, yeah, it is, we've seen the importance of being able to communicate. So many people communicate through that avenue, I mean, not very many people have landlines anymore. Those cell phone towers are, everything is affected by by that storm. Everybody was affected by that down there. So in this book, obviously you're going to talk about the destruction, what happened, who's affected. I
Yes.
believe you said that you're going to do some interviews.
Yes, what I have people lined up, but what I'm finding out is that there have been people who have lied about their experiences. So I'm having to be really careful in researching who I talk to
Right.
because I guess people want to be or feel
Yeah, in the
important
limelight, yeah.
within the
So are
law.
you still looking for people that might be willing to share their story? Or
Yes,
you are?
I
So that
am.
might be
Yes,
something if anybody's watching this interview and was honestly affected from this
yes,
this tragedy, we can connect you with Rebecca so that you
great.
can share your story with her, and maybe it would help everybody. It's something to consider. So that those
Yes,
victim interviews that everybody has a story, and these are important stories to get out to the public. What really happened, not the narrative that's out there, but what really happened.
yes.
So, um,
And I also want people to know that I'm not doing this to get rich off the backs of people who have passed
right,
because I have been talked to multiple times from people thinking that this is a money making scheme
right,
for me to line my pockets because I will give some of the proceeds to the victims. But
right.
again, I have to be very careful about where that money goes
Yeah,
because there's a lot of money that's not being distributed and we don't know where it is.
right. So I think that in itself is that is a really huge issue, the whole donation piece. And we know that the organizations that have in the past um, promised to 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 give support, take care of, help, whatever the case is, these disaster areas. And like you said, that's not happening. Um, a lot of local, a lot of local organizations are trying to take on that role of um, of donations and dispersing that
Yes,
um, those donations, whether it's food, clothing, money. Um,
yes,
I think that's a really, really tough. I know myself too, if I, even around here locally, the stores, they'll say, "Do you want to donate to this cause?" And I'm like, "No, I don't," because I know they're corrupt. So if I can bring it to this, if I can bring this to the SPCA here and deliver it to the local SPCA, I'll just go bring them the money. I'm not donating to someone, to a third party, to do that. So it's really sad that our minds have been tainted, and we're afraid to give now because of those
Mhm.
situations. So that's something else to consider is ways to donate without, with no and knowing that the right people will get it. So that is
Right.
definitely a big thing. So that's something I mean, you locally there, you could go to any, you know, you could just donate to one family and you would be helping someone.
Exactly.
So, I
Exactly.
think that's probably what I would do, is pick something or
Yes.
someone locally that is suffering,
Yes.
and just help that one person, because even if you're just helping one family, that's a big help, because you're helping
Yes.
them, and yeah, that allows someone else to help other people. So, um, and I think just even helping one person is good. Um,
And I also wanted to list in the back of my book in memorabilia, in memory of, and I wanted to list the names of all these people who have passed that we know of. And I was told multiple times that the families would have to be asked first,
right.
or they would be able to sue me or whatnot. And so I'm like, there's a lot of families, and I don't even know how I would reach those people to say, hey, can I tell your
Yeah,
specific story? So what
you
I've
might,
done,
yeah, you might have to just do a general in memory of the families.
exactly, so that's what I'm doing. I'm
Yeah,
doing like a breakdown in the book of how many people that I know of in Tennessee have passed, because this affected Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, and I just saw another one saying Virginia was touched by it also. So I'll say like 10 people
yeah,
died in this place or whatever, because I want us to see it and know that there are real people that we lost. But then,
Right,
like I said, I can't be specific due to
right,
legal
right,
ramifications. So
right. Yeah, definitely. So, you're going to have photographs in the book, right?
yes,
Of the different
yes.
areas that were affected and what that looked like, right?
I've been asking for photos from
Okay.
different people.
Yep.
I have a service provider. He's a like an internet worker who, of course, is taking pictures. I've also got a lady who is a amateur photographer. I've got a friend who's a school teacher that has driven around. I have people at work that are firefighters or first responders that are going
Responders.
to send me things. And I've got
Mhm.
right now I've got probably 300 pictures. So I don't want the book to turn into a picture book, so I'll have to
Right.
pick and choose.
Yeah.
But people are saying to me, well, why don't you go out and take pictures? And it's like, okay, first of all, some of these areas are still not safe.
Right.
Okay, whether it's from the contamination or the bad
You'd
water
have to
or the
spend months going out there taking pictures just because of
yeah,
the area that's been decimated. That would be
yeah.
crazy
So
and not safe.
that's not me. I
Right.
don't have time to write and do
Mm.
that. So I'm
Right.
dependent on other people, but they will get credit. They will
Yeah.
be written inside the book.
Right.
So that's
Yeah.
the photos are horrific, absolutely horrific. And I'm going pictures and
Oh, I'm losing your voice, son. I'm losing your voice,
depression.
Becky. There you go. I just
Oh,
lost your
I have a
voice.
history
There you go.
of depression. So I hear and I see, and I'm getting all, and the photographs are killing me. It
Yeah.
is painful to
Yeah.
do this book. This is not about me.
Right. Well,
So,
and that's the thing
um,
too. Whenever we take on a project that is traumatic like that, I mean, especially if you've had traumatic events in your own life, it triggers those, and it does
yes,
make it puts up some type of a block sometimes to. I mean, the book that I'm trying to write right now, I've been working on it for a couple of years, and I can't seem to get through it because of the topic. So I get
mm,
this, when you're personally involved in something, it takes a while to get through that, especially if you have that history. That's
yes,
understandable. So yeah. Okay, so I get that with the photographs. Helping hands. When you say mentioned helping hands, is that uh you're going to put that in the book? Is that help? Are those organizations that are helping? Is that something that you're going out and doing? Are you just highlighting people who have gone out and helped? Like, I mean, like we see in the news, the Amish have built these 12 houses for these people in North
right,
Carolina. Is it
right.
going to be something like that, or how is that going to look in the book?
It's going to be everything you just mentioned because even though the government should do a lot more, there are people who came here for weeks and left their lives to
Right,
help, whether through FEMA or whatnot. So you have those people, some of the government people, you have the neighbors who cooked food because they didn't want their food to go bad and other people didn't have food. You have the churches. The churches have been wonderfully giving for financial and water and clothing. Then you have, I mean, there's just so many stories of people helping people that as many stories as I know and hear and see, I'm going to try to cover it
yeah,
inside that chapter.
you might have to do its own book on just that topic by the time you're done. That wouldn't the how wonderful would that be though, that you have so many people helping that you would have to create a whole
Yes,
series on just that. Wouldn't that be wonderful?
yes,
Yeah.
yes. I just want people to know that again, you can't be dependent on your government to help you, and that back in the old days, it was
Yeah, we didn't
neighbors helping
yeah,
neighbors.
that didn't exist. And part of me, I mean, that's a double-edged sword, you have um I think the government comes in and takes over and people forget how to take care of themselves. And we know
Yes.
that agenda, but um having said that, and I know that there's been a lot in the news about FEMA and how they've turned the other cheek and they're not helping. That's the
Mm-hmm.
organization. When you hear that information, we have to
Yes.
remember that behind that organization are people, and not all
Yeah.
people. Most of those people are out there on the ground helping. That's their desire to help, to help the people. So when you hear that there's that line in the sand, judgment. Don't We can't judge. We can't judge,
No.
especially what we hear, because unless you actually see it with your eyes, you don't know that it's true. So we definitely need to um, consider that, regardless of whether you work for them, work for FEMA,
Hmm.
that person still has a good heart, and it is their desire to help. It's the organization that you're hearing the bad things about. So
Yeah.
just we just need to try to be mindful of that too. Um, so you had mentioned that you struggle with depression, and when you were looking at these pictures, it kind of triggered that emotion in you. Um, you're going to have a section in the book that addresses mental and physical health. I'm assuming that's the health of those that have been affected by,
Yeah.
that are right on the
Yes.
ground. Um,
Yes. I mean, because even first
not
responders,
not just you as the writer is where I'm
no,
going with that. Well,
it's going to
obviously,
be,
yeah. Okay.
yes, everyone. I mean, because first responders, yeah, they deal with some of this stuff daily, but they've never seen this much destruction or this much
Yeah.
death at one time. And then you have people who they watch their house wash down the river, or a neighbor on a roof dying or whatever. I mean, this is stuff that you don't think about. People are like, I'm fine, I'm fine. No, they're not. They're
They're in
not fine.
shock.
They may think they're
Yeah.
fine, but they are not
Yeah,
fine.
they're in shock, right? Well, anytime that's a big loss. I mean, you can't be, you have to be affected by that. I mean, there's no way that you can just walk away from that without being affected in some way. And I know we're all different. We all handle situations differently, but to lose your home is your security, that's your life, your livelihood. Everything stems from that space. So,
Yes,
yeah,
and I want to bring up California. I want to say that I'm very sorry for all the loss and pain that they're dealing with right now,
right,
and I want people to realize that whether they have $10 million or $100, that house had everything in it.
right,
It had their memorabilia, their wedding rings, or their children's photos. I don't care how rich they were;
right,
they're in the same boat we were in,
right.
and it's horrible. And I'm very sorry that they're going through what they're going through, but we need to stop this. I'm worse off than you are.
Yeah, I
This is
think that
about human experience.
the division is it's really wreaking havoc with this country. We need to come together, and
Yes,
it's really sad that it has to be situations like this, events like this that bring people together. It's too bad that we can't
yes,
just unite and be that way organically. And
yes,
it's too bad we have to wait for something like this to happen. Um, so we've decided that you're putting pictures in, and that's going to give us an idea of how bad it really was. You're going to
yes,
have interviews. You're going to interview people who live locally, that if you're able um, to to add to that. Um, so how well prepared was the area you live in? How I know you said you weren't prepared, and I think in general we probably see this more than not, is
mhm,
that mentality of, oh, that's not going to happen to me, or oh, they're making a mountain out of a molehill. If I have milk and bread in the fridge for a few days, I'm fine. Those types of things. So, but uh, how, what is your thought on that? The people in your
mhm.
area, how prepared were they, outside of yourself, who you already admitted that you weren't quite there?
Well, you're right about the bread and milk. People had bread and milk. Some of the grocery stores were, I don't say wiped out, but no, that we were not prepared. We were kind of laughing at the fact that it was a hurricane and we're not at the beach. We're in the mountains. And the worst thing we have happen is some flooding. and every now and then Interstate 40 will fall off the side of the mountain. We expect that because of the land shifting and all that, but no, this was not. We couldn't prepare for this because there were areas that had never flooded before that flooded, and I mean, oh my God! And then the rush of water. I saw something that talked about imagine filling up 60 Olympic-sized pools, swimming pools. That was the speed of the water. Like imagine that being like filled within seconds, 60 swimming pools, and oh, none of us were prepared for this, especially losing internet. We were okay with electricity, but when we lost communications, we couldn't check on our mom, our dad, or our neighbor, our cousins. We couldn't talk to people. The only communication we had available to us was the radio stations, and they stayed on 24/7 to keep us updated. But it was, I mean, literally, it was like a bomb was dropped on us, and no one was prepared.
Wow. That's something. I know that we all have that, that whole mentality. I mentioned that it's not going to happen, but I mean, how um did the government, did the local government, did they prepare you for this? Did they, I mean, obviously we knew there was a hurricane coming because they announced it, but did they prepare the area where you were to say this is really it's going to hit us hard? Or was it
No,
no?
because I would say the areas that always tend to flood, they went ahead and think evacuated those areas as the water was coming because we'd had I think 3 or 4 days of rain prior to Hurricane Helene, which I understand Hurricane Helene when it hit us it was actually a tropical storm, but everyone still refers to it as Hurricane Helene. When she hit and she had so much water in addition to what we'd already had for 3 or 4 days, that's what caused a lot of the mudslides and that one family of 11 that died in a mudslide. You can't prepare for that. And when areas that don't normally flood, if you can't for that. And when you think you're safe because you're up on the side of the mountain and your house slides off the mountain in a mudslide, you can't prepare for that. There was nowhere to go, and people thought they were safe in their homes. The government couldn't prepare for that. Just wanted to say that in my book, I took there's like an emergency preparations list that was made by the government and posted online. And I took that list and I added to it and put it in this book because we are supposed to learn from our lessons or learn lessons from what we go through. And so there are things that I never thought about having, which now I realize I need to have, like a battery charger for your cell phone, because the only way we could charge our phones was to use our vehicles.
Right.
So there's different things I added to that list, and going forward, I want people to be better prepared. So you can't stop these things from happening, but we can definitely try to protect ourselves and be better prepared.
Right. Right. So having said that, you're adding this list to the book. What other suggestions would you have, or I'm sure that you must have listed in the book, what future preparations should people make so that they are, let me rephrase it, what preparations should they make so that in the future they're better prepared in case something happens?
Number one is water. Okay. You may think that you'll always have access to water, but that's not going to happen when it's flooded and our water pipes were washed away. So people think, oh, a case of water will do me. Logically, you would want to have at least 2 cases per person for every couple of days or whatnot. And I know we don't have a lot of space to store water, but there's also things on Amazon that will allow you to, I guess, clean water.
Yeah.
So that you can drink it.
Yeah, they have.
But it's also important, right? And it's also important to have water to flush your toilets with. And so what we did in our apartment, we had that swimming pool. We had that huge swimming pool, and people started asking the apartment, "Can we get buckets and get the water from the swimming pool and use it to flush our toilets?" And so we did that. That's something people don't think, to wash away that sewage.
Right.
Then of course, having all the batteries in the world, making sure you have the batteries, and people who didn't have cars wouldn't have been able to charge their phones, so you want to have those chargers for your phones, which I think can last up to, I don't know, 8 hours or something. And also, we got one of those radios. We got a radio that is operated by solar and battery, and also it's got a crank on it. And
Yeah, I
you think, oh
have
my God,
one.
that's so old.
Yeah, I have one that has the, you crank it up. Yeah. Hey, it doesn't matter if it's old, it works. That's all that matters.
So those are just the main things that
Yeah.
I think people need.
Nice. So I'm going to ask you this question, which you may have already answered throughout all of these others. Lessons that you've learned. Lessons that you've learned. Things that you would do differently. Things that I mean, you've given us the preparedness information, but outside of being prepared by having food and water, what lessons have you learned and will be in the book? I mean, these lessons don't necessarily have to be about food, water, being prepared. They could be lessons about our interaction for humanity, helping,
Mm-hmm.
compassion. So what
Yeah.
would you say are lessons that
the we us learning that we are not an island amongst ourselves, that we were never meant to totally depend on ourselves. We have gotten so far away from our neighbors, we don't even know their names.
right?
And during this storm, after this storm, people came together and learned each other's names and had grills lit up to cook the food that was going to spoil because of no electricity. And those relationships need to stay put, and people need to realize that you need one another. You don't have to have the government to live, but you do need other people to live. And so I hope that these horrible situations will bring us closer together. I understand that politics gets in the way, but the people who have really suffered, I think they have learned that they do need to stay in touch with their neighbors. That's a big thing. You've got to come together, keep everyone alive, technically.
Right. Yeah.
The other thing is, I will never laugh about a hurricane. I will never think to myself, why do people in Florida not leave whenever there's a hurricane coming? I will never laugh or say that again, because I didn't know a hurricane could bring flooding to the mountains and cause mudslides. I've never heard of that. Have you?
Yeah, so I have my opinion about a lot of this, which I'm not going to get into here because it's not, this is, we're talking for you. Um, so I think you're right. I mean, we need to we need to come together. We need to stop listening to that propaganda that's out there that says you're a better person if you can stand on your own and take care of yourself and all of this. I mean, this country was better off and more prepared when families lived in the country on the farms and took care of each other. You had generations living under one roof and they took care of each other. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that was the good life. And I think that was taken from us intentionally to put us where we are, to have everybody be lost. I mean, people
Yeah.
are suffering. They're lost. They've lost their homes. They've lost their center. I mean, coming together will help to heal that. But had people been more, had people been closer knit, if the communities had been closer knit, it might have lessened the trauma. I
Mhm.
don't know that, but I mean, if we have connection, support, compassion, love, we have all of that. Those are all high vibrational ideas,
Yes.
frequencies, whatever, however you want to state that. Those are things that, I mean, you can't go wrong with. Um, so, okay, so you did mention that in the back of the book you wanted to put the names of the victims if you could get permission to do that. So maybe if anybody's listening to the podcast that was affected and you said Tennessee, North Carolina area, is that what you're thinking?
Um, I'm going to mainly, I was going to do all 5 states, and now I've
Yeah.
learned there's 6, and
Okay.
that's too much. So I'm
Yeah.
going to focus on the state of North Carolina.
Okay.
However, I am welcoming anyone in North
Right.
Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, Tennessee, and Georgia and
Wow.
Florida.
Right. So if any,
Anybody who has lost a family member, right now I have 2 pets. I have 2 pet names that I've
Mhm.
been given permission
Yeah,
to uh, to
to
write
list.
in there. So if
Yeah,
you have a pet, even
right.
I'll be more than happy to
Hey, they're
list them
family
in the book.
members. Our pets are our family too. Yeah, so if anyone listens to the podcast and wants to contribute to that list, you can either contact me or we'll have Rebecca's information below the video, so you can certainly contact her directly too. Um, so, well, there's definitely a lot to consider um, when we think about a natural disaster like this. And obviously, we know we're dealing with the fires out west now. Um, I mean, we had Hawaii earlier on, and how many hurricanes have there been that have just decimated
Mm.
the southern states, you know? Um,
Yes,
so these are not things that are going away anytime soon, I don't believe. Would be nice if they would, but at this point, we are not seeing that. So, um, but as humans, we have a great capacity to overcome any obstacle. Um,
yes,
these events that you're describing in this book, Hurricane Helene, they provide us with good examples of compassion and strength. You know, the events will give the reader a better sense of what the people who lived in those areas went through after the storm too. Um,
yes.
yeah,
And I'm still dealing with it. I mean, everything. The unemployment rate has, I think, tripled in Buncombe County. Even our Buncombe County government has frozen any job hires. So they had 85 open positions. I am a career temp in addition to writing books, and I was just told that I am losing my contract as a temp at the end of this month.
mhm,
And I know many people who do not have their jobs because their businesses either got washed away or due to the economy, they actually closed their doors.
right,
So this isn't going to be over anytime soon, and that's why I'm doing the 2 separate books.
right. So it'll be a two-part series. And that's something I think that people don't really take into consideration. Yeah, there's a storm. It destroys things. People rebuild and get on with it. It's not that easy because you're not just rebuilding your house, you're rebuilding communities. Um, these communities that are affecting so many people. You've got these businesses and homes, and it's just it's it's a catastrophic event, and it's affecting not only the
Yes.
people that are immediately affected by the event, but I mean, it's a rippling effect. It's affecting you, and then it's affecting your job, and then it's affecting the people who depend on that job, and then it's affecting the people that use whatever resource or product that is created by that job, and it just keeps rippling out and further until, it affects a lot of people. Um, Ideally, the book, I'm sure, is focused on the people that were physically affected, which is very important. I think that's the most important is, you know, focusing on that rebuild and helping those people to get back their lives. And as you said, it won't be the normal they lived. It'll be a new normal, which um, hopefully will be better than what they had before. But we definitely don't know what that's going to look like. Um,
Well, if anybody has visited Asheville or the Western North Carolina, they know Blue Ridge Parkway and they know the River Arts District. And so we still are not allowed to go to the River Arts District unless we go to volunteer to scrape mud. So the artists are having a horrible time. We've actually lost some that have just closed their doors and given up, or they're going to go elsewhere. But as far as Blue Ridge Parkway, they had closed it down after the storm, and then they finally opened. I think it was 11 miles. I traveled on 7 miles one day, and it's like one tree standing and then like 30 trees down.
yeah.
So if you are used to seeing these beautiful trees off the Blue Ridge Parkway, they're gone.
Wow. So not only is it affecting people, it's affecting the landscape too. It's affecting the environment. I mean, those trees, they provide oxygen and
Hmm.
beauty. Yeah,
And animals. We have
yeah,
animals
animals.
now. There was a pack of coyotes that were actually spotted in West Asheville because these animals, the ones that didn't wash away, they no longer have their habitat or
Right,
food.
right.
It's it's affecting
Yeah, so
every
this,
part of our life.
yeah, so it affects so many aspects of not only those lives of the people living there, but the animals too. Yeah, a lot to consider. I think that this book is going to be jam-packed full of information. Yeah. Is there anything else that will be in the book that we haven't talked about?
Oh, right now there's 17 chapters, so I'm sure
Yeah.
there is, but it's just so much. It
Yeah.
is so much.
Yeah, I'm sure that as you get closer to tying up the loose ends, you're probably going to be removing things and adding things just because
Yes,
you're not going to be able to fit
it's
everything in there.
overkill right now.
Yeah.
It is overkill because I have
Yeah.
a lot of day by day, because there are things that are reported every day, like day one, day two, day three, day 60.
Yeah,
And
so
so I think it's going to get, you know,
maybe some of those things that you have in there that you can't fit in the book, you can use as
hmm
marketing
hmm
tools.
that's true. That's true.
You can't fit it in the book, but this is similar to what you'll be seeing, or these are
hmm
things that went on. This is what you'll be seeing in the book, those types of things.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes. And I want to say one thing. I know it's graphic, but when they say there were bodies in the trees, that is not false information.
Yeah.
And I need people to stop saying that it is because I have two friends that went to help and they were first responders and
Mhm.
they saw what they saw.
Right. So, and I think that's a perfect example when I mentioned earlier that there's so much going on that we don't hear about. I think the media is just picking and choosing what they put out there. And
Yes.
I know some people will argue that, but it's so traumatic, people don't want to see that. But I think that's part of why we're where we are today is people are being, I don't want to say protected from the truth, but
Hmm.
it's being withheld. I mean,
Yes.
if you don't see the truth, if you don't know what's really going on, you don't know that you need to do things differently. You don't
Yes.
know that there's danger. You don't know that there was danger. People need to know the truth. And I think that the media
Yes.
for years, decades has been robbing us of the truth. So that's true. So yeah, and I've heard the same thing. I have a few friends that are down in that area too that have mentioned that, they're really not telling the truth. they're not sharing the details about the, like you said, the body parts, and not to be graphic, but that's the truth. That's the reality. And um, those things are happening because information is being withheld from us. So if we knew
Yes.
what to expect, what could happen, I think people would be a little more serious about preparing for
Yes.
things like this. We would be, people don't see this stuff, so they think, oh yeah, we might lose our house, but so what? We'll rebuild it. It's just a house. And I think part of me is like, I think that's a healthy attitude. You're right, it is just a house, and we can rebuild it as long as the people are alive. Um,
Yes.
but your home, like I said, is your castle, right? It's everything. You invest yourself into that. So a lot of people have a deep connection to that space. So you can't think that way.
Also,
Yeah.
you think that, but what we found is that any home that was grandfathered in and left alone, that they now have determined are in flood zones, they're not allowing those people to rebuild in on their property.
Yeah. So now these
So
people have not only lost their home, but they've lost the ability to rebuild it because they can't.
yeah,
That's terrible.
and they're paying taxes. The tax bills are coming due. Property taxes are coming due in Buncombe County August.
So this is a
So
way for
even if
them to
your house,
confiscate your property so they can make those 15-minute cities, isn't it?
yeah, yeah, and also you're paying for a house that doesn't exist. But they're
Right.
saying that the bulk of the year, January through September, in September, you live there, so you are still responsible for that tax, property tax on that property, even if it's no more.
Yeah. And if you don't pay it, they don't
Yep,
confiscate it right away, but eventually they will. And if you can't rebuild on it, why would you pay taxes on it? But
yep,
again, they'll take it and they'll rezone it, and then eventually they'll build on it. The government will build on
yes,
it. Yeah.
yes.
So this is just a way to take, yeah. Anyway, we're not going to talk about that. That's not what this is about.
I know, and if I disappear one day, it's because I said too
Yeah.
much.
Yeah. I'm right with you, honey. I'm right with you. Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So that's going to be a really, really jam-packed book, and you're definitely going to need to dedicate two parts to that. Do you know
Yes,
when that one might be out, or is it too premature to ask that question?
I have a book festival in Sevierville, Tennessee called Happily Ever After Book Festival. That's the September 5th, 6th, and 7th. And I was hoping to get Dragonfly Passion done because it's a follow up to Butterfly Blossoms, but it's the
Right.
young adult version
Hmm.
and continuation. But now I couldn't predict Helene, and now I'm being pushed by people to try to at least get the first part of that out this year.
Hmm.
So in a perfect world, I would get both of them out by July, August, so that I could actually sell them, not only on Amazon, but also at the book
Well,
festival
if
in
you get them
Sevierville, Tennessee.
done, we can make it happen to get them out by September. If you get them done by
Okay.
August, we can get them ready to be out by September.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
so um, obviously that puts all the pressure on you, but anyway, so
Yes.
anyway, it's out there. So okay, so that's good. Do you want to add anything else about any of the other books that I know you just mentioned Dragonfly? I'm gonna draw a blank here for a minute here. Butterfly Blossom and Dragonfly Passion is the
Right.
young adult version. And that one you're gonna try
Yes.
to have out. So you're a busy lady.
Yes.
You're a very busy lady.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Well, I just, with Butterfly Passion, I grew up in a very religious, very strict home. Um, and even though I'm not Sally, the protagonist, there's a lot of parallels with my life and what I'm currently going through.
mhm,
And so I'm just trying to make people understand that you don't just wake up one day and say, "Oh, I'm a lesbian," or
right.
"I'm gay," or whatever. You were raised to be one way and you follow those societal norms to the T, you try to do everything right. But if your heart and your being is attracted to someone of the same sex, there's nothing you can do other than to,
Yeah,
push
deny
it
it.
back and
Right.
ignore it.
Yeah, just
And that's
decline
not your life. That's not real living. That's not being authentic.
it.
So I want people to realize that it's not just this crazy choice that, people choose to do.
Yeah.
It's deeper than that.
Yeah, and I also I know I always say it with anyone I talk to in any situation in any book, whether any type of self-help book, and even fiction. I mean, you can draw parallels to fictional writing with real life
Mm-hmm.
situations. There's always a lesson to learn. So, and
Mm-hmm.
in this one, Dragonfly Passion, it doesn't. I mean, yes, it's about this situation where this young woman, right? Is
Yes,
yeah. So,
Sally.
yeah. So she realizes that she's a lesbian. So, okay, so that doesn't have to be the lesbian situation. It could be another
Mm-hmm.
situation, you know? It's
Mm-hmm.
just the discomfort of knowing that you're having to step outside your norm to be
Yeah.
your authentic self. Um, so again, the message the message can fit many different people in different ways, but
Yeah.
that sounds like it's going to be a good book too. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, all right. Well, do you want to add anything else? Any other tidbits or?
I can't think of anything else. My brain is just
All right. No,
mush.
that's good. I think we've kind of you asked a lot of questions. So, well, we've had another great conversation. This time
Yes.
with Rebecca Wells Phillips. She's
Thank
been a
you.
busy woman. So she continues to share her experiences with the written word through all of these books that have wonderful, wonderful topics and ways of discernment. I'm looking forward to reading Hurricane Helene, The Resiliency After the Storm, and Dragonfly Passion, actually. Um, so whenever they're released, we'll have to reconnect again after they're released to see how they're doing.
Yes.
Um, so,
Yes.
so thank you, Rebecca, for joining us today. It's been a great conversation. Um,
Thank you. Thank
yeah,
you for
it's been a
having me.
great conversation. And thank you, everybody who's watching, who's sitting with us today. I hope you join me again when we talk to our next author, who has a different story to tell. So have a great afternoon.